USA,
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 USA.
USA.
God, what
Welcome
a
into the
goddamn game that was
yeah.
over
Welcome into
Iran.
the
How nervous were you after? I mean, we had the early goal from Pulisic, or I guess I say early goal. What was it, 39th, 40th ish minute?
mid 30s, mid to late 30s. But yeah, no,
But
that whole second half just edge of your seat because you knew that Iran was going to have the ball in our half the entire second half. Pulisic was out, made some decent offensive possessions, had a couple shots on goal, but when you have that 1-0 lead, you're sitting back protecting it. All you need to do is hold on to advance to the knockout stage, and thankfully they did, but without a great effort from Iran there too.
I hate when you're sitting there and Iran had the ball in USA territory for what felt like an eternity of it almost felt like that entire second half was the ball was possessed by Iran. I mean, you're sitting there, at the edge of your seat, and every time the USA just clears the ball, it's like that felt like a win. But that final, what was it? Maybe 5 minutes into stoppage time, when they had that ball that just, squeaked through the goalies, through Matt Turner's legs. And it looked like, oh my God, is that ball just going to barely trickle in? And then, one of our players came in and saved the day with that last kick to get that out. But God, if he would have hit that ball a little bit more square instead of just flopping, going for the, trying to earn that PK, I think that he probably could have scored that goal because he was right there and there was nobody in front of him outside of a diving Matt Turner.
Yeah. No, it was a fantastic game all around. We'll see a couple key injuries. We'll see what the status is. Christian Pulisic went to the hospital after the game and tweeted out and said that he should be good to go for Saturday, and was congratulating their guys for holding it down the second half. So we'll see.
I thought that he just took I really thought he just took a goalie's cleat to the nuts. I didn't think it was something extremely serious where he's going to the hospital.
Yeah, I don't know if they're looking at maybe like rib injury or something, but it said abdominal, so I don't know the extent.
That could be because I think the announcers kept saying, yeah, it looked like he took a knee to the mid region or the mid section, which to me that means
family jewels.
Yeah, to the baby maker, but no, that was, I don't know, what an awesome game, and one of those had to have it games, and we got it, and it's us in England that make it to the group stage first time since 2014, like you were saying earlier. Obviously, we did not make it in 2018, which didn't make the whole freaking out of 32 countries that make it, didn't make it at all, which was extremely pathetic. But hey, back in a tournament play, which is awesome.
Yep. Welcome into Dead Arm Sports. We were on a little hiatus for the Thanksgiving week. A lot unfolded in the 2 weeks since we have recorded. We're live on a Tuesday night. You can check us out on YouTube. Jel, going to kick it over to you. You've got a quick question of the day, the double QOTD.
Okay, so, and this is, I was listening to something where it was like they were talking about, what are the best crunchy foods? And it was like nachos and, a really good crisp salad. And, they were naming off a ton of things, but they mentioned Cheetos. And that brings me to, are Cheetos a chip? We've had a similar conversation, the long debate of, is a hot dog a sandwich? I think absolutely not. That's absurd. But are Cheetos a chip? I get that it says it's a snack food on the bag, but you kind of consider it like, if you have Cheetos and potato chips, like you kind of consider them in the same like category. So ultimately, question is, are Cheetos a chip?
100%. They're in the chip aisle. They're mixed in with the chips. And if somebody was like, oh yeah, I'll bring over a bag of chips for the game and bring over Cheetos, you're not calling them out and being like, you didn't fucking bring chips, you brought Cheetos. Like it's accepted. I mean, they come in the little snack boxes that you can buy for your kid to throw in their lunch or whatever like that, and it's just mixed in there with it. So yes, I would 100% consider it a chip.
But I guess it depends. I guess it depends what you consider a chip, because over in Europe, the English call French fries chips. When you think when it's fish and chips, when you buy fish and chips, you're getting fried fish and French fries. So it's like, what it ultimately is your definition of a chip. I think I agree with you. That's you gave a very strong argument there. That they're in the chip aisle. They're in the, if you buy one of those 36 individual packs of like Frito-Lay chip bags, it's included in there along with the Doritos and the Sun Chips and the Lays. So I think you just sold me.
Yeah. I'm kind of having second guesses though, because I'm also thinking too that the long word for chip is potato chip. And I don't necessarily think Cheetos are potato.
Okay, but Fritos are also corn chips.
True.
And I believe that Cheetos are made of corn.
Probably they have to be.
So,
all right.
It doesn't have to be potato.
Back in on the show.
They're back in.
Before we get into our social plugs here and recap week 13, we did miss a huge week of college football, NFL over the weekend prior to Thanksgiving. So just wanted to take a quick couple minutes here just to go over one big headline or one big takeaway from that weekend of football. Could be college or NFL. What blew your mind, or what did you take away from that weekend, Joe?
I mean, the biggest game that I was focused on, especially in the college world, was that USC UCLA game. And I think it's pretty much settled at this point that Caleb Williams is that guy's an absolute monster. So I don't even want to touch on him. I want to touch on the other quarterback in that game, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. What do you think his NFL prospects are at this point? He has made massive improvements. He is kind of showing that, he's the type of player that where the NFL quarterback movement is going in terms of wanting somebody mobile, somebody that can make plays, on rollouts, make throws on rollouts, which he does. Make throws when you're kind of in this, the bullshit where he's got to run around because his line broke down, and he's able to do that. He's also able to run, maybe not the speed of Justin Fields, but but what he does bring is a little bit bigger of a presence in terms of just pure size, and he's got speed on top of that. So between his mobility, he's not the most, perfect passer in the world, but he's been dynamic all season. He was dynamic last season, but I think he took another step this season. So ultimately, my question is, what do you see for his future in the NFL? I'm not saying first round pick necessarily right now, but if he performs well in the combine, all you need is one GM to fall in love with you. Do you see DTR being a high-end QB prospect, or where do you see him falling ultimately?
I see him more in the middle rounds, I think. I think Chip Kelly's offense scares a lot of scouts and a lot of people, especially going back to the Oregon days and all of that. But I do like him as a prospect. I see him kind of fitting into kind of like a situation maybe that Malik Willis is finding himself in right now, where you're drafted in kind of those middle rounds. You're going to be a backup. You're not going to be starting right away. Maybe you make a little bit of noise in training camp, and maybe that starter in front of you falters and you might get your shot due to injury or their performance. And then you step in and see what you can do. But I don't necessarily think he's guaranteed any playing time at all in the NFL, regardless of when he's drafted or anything like that. But he could be somebody that down the road we're like, oh yeah, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He was awesome in college, and now he's out there making plays and stuff in the NFL. And I don't know that he's ever going to be a franchise player necessarily. He might be an okay starter for a year or two for a team, but I don't know. He's just kind of one of those guys that falls into those middle rounds. And from there, it's kind of a crapshoot. You could have a Tom Brady. You could have, I don't know. Yeah. Name 500 quarterbacks in the last, however long that have been
Dak ended up in the
there.
4th round. Kirk Cousins ended up in the 4th round. They've both been successful. Obviously, yep. DTR doesn't fall into comps with either of those two players, or Tom Brady, a lot more mobility. I'm sitting here thinking, he's in LA already. Justin Herbert's pretty mobile. He might be a nice little fit there as a backup, staying in LA for the Chargers. If Herbert ever goes down, if they ever, I believe they canned that doctor that tried to shoot up Tyrod Taylor when he punctured his lung with that needle. But if that doctor is still around and Herbert ends up getting punctured in the lung from the medical doctor, hey, DTR could probably step in and run that offense probably pretty well, because they do some nice things offensively with rollouts, rolling out Herbert, and that's when DTR is at his best. So I think that could be a good fit. And if the Chargers can score him in the 3rd or 4th round as a backup, certainly I think an improvement over Easton Stick. And if you know anything about the Chargers, they are as injury plagued as any team. It's been what a decade, a decade and a half, where the Chargers have just constantly they've been getting screwed with injuries. So I think that it's a good idea if they can improve that backup quarterback situation. DTR might be able to stay in LA and fit right into that scheme.
Absolutely. No, I like that. I like that a lot. I'm going to save mine. I'm going to plug our socials here, and then I'll get into it and you'll understand why here. But we can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Be the first thing that pops up. We are live on YouTube, typically on Tuesdays, sometimes Wednesdays. If you subscribe and click the bell, you'll know exactly when we record. You won't have to guess at all. Monitor that chat so you can ask us any questions there. And if you do miss it, you can check us out on our YouTube page the following day. All of our videos will be up, so you can watch us if you prefer that method of listening, watching our podcast. You can hit Gel up at DasGel. That's at DASJEL. I can be found at DasJPEC. That's at DASJPEC. Can send us any questions there if you miss our live feed. And make sure you subscribe on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot, get you some sticker swag sent out. My big takeaway is the playoff assassin South Carolina Gamecocks knocking off Tennessee and Clemson in back-to-back weekends, two teams that still were in the mix for the playoffs. And Tennessee was in a fantastic spot. They were sitting as that 5 seed in the college football playoff. You figured that they would get the bump up with the Michigan-Ohio State game. We'll get into that in this next segment here too, as that has huge playoff implications. But they were sitting in a great spot. Weren't going to play in the SEC championship game, but you figured they run the table, do what they're supposed to, and they're going to be that 4 seed in the playoff, probably facing either Georgia or that Michigan-Ohio State winner. And what happens? They go into Columbia, South Carolina, night game at Willie B, and just get absolutely manhandled and demolished. Hendon Hooker ends up, unfortunately, tearing his ACL knee injury, so he is out for the rest of the season for the Volunteers. And then, again, South Carolina doing something they haven't done since the 2013 season, going and winning against Clemson, either at home or on the road. Go into Death Valley, knock off Clemson this last weekend, 31-30, essentially ending Clemson's playoff hopes as well. So that was my big takeaway, was that those last 2 weekends, there's been 2 playoff teams that have gone down at the hands of the Gamecocks.
Yeah, I mean, Spencer Rattler decides to finally show up for the first time in his career. I'm, Shane Beamer looks like sometimes it takes a few years to put together a pretty solid program, but obviously son of Frank Beamer, and legend in college football. And do you think he's got something rolling here with the Cox?
I do. I think he's obviously, this is going to do wonders for his recruiting too, knocking off Tennessee, knocking off Clemson, maybe winning the battle of some of the South Carolina high school kids that are trying to decide between those 2 schools. His dad, obviously, like you had touched on, had a fantastic program up at Virginia Tech for a long time.
I was going to say in the ACC, just dominated the ACC.
Yep. So it's tough recruiting in the SEC. You're going up against Georgia. It's in your same division, going up against Bama, LSU, you name it. But no, I mean, you got to love his attitude. He's getting fired up on the sidelines. Looks like he's a fun coach to play for too. I mean, he's just out there super happy, excited about everything, very grateful. So no, I think that there's going to be a nice stepping stone here for them to get to the next level after these 2 big wins, and see who they end up getting matched up with the bowl week.
Now we've mentioned Mark Stoops taking over at Oklahoma for, his daddy Bob. Possibly Shane Beamer taking over for Daddy Frank over at Va Tech if they give him the right kind of cash, and he rides that Bieber legacy a little bit. Or Beamer, not Bieber. Jesus, Justin.
I don't know. I don't know how you'd leave an SEC team for Virginia Tech. It kind of seems like just kind of like a even switch up. So it's kind of a lateral move there. So I don't necessarily think that he'll be leaving it all. If it is, I think it's for a program that'll be a step up. But no, second year at South Carolina and 2 bowl game appearances. So won the Mayo Bowl last year, finished the season 8-4 this year. So should get a pretty decent bowl. I think right now they're projected for Gator Bowl in Jacksonville, I think, against Notre Dame. So we'll see what happens there. And speaking of coaches, let's get right into that before we jump into some of these other games. Had 4 college coaching hires. Oregon's offensive coordinator going down to Arizona, but
32-year-old,
32, yes, youngest head coach
32 years old. So, is this because you think that? I mean, that's the youngest coach in all of major college football. Do you think it's because maybe they think, hey, 32-year-old, he can relate to these kids a little bit easier than if we hired another Herm Edwards type who's 60 whatever, and probably can't relate to these kids as much? Is that maybe a factor here? 32 years old, you don't ever see this kind of a jump.
No, and I think it does have something to do with that. And I mean, he's had a fantastic year with Oregon. Their offense has been pretty good for the most part. He's turned around Bo Nix. Granted, this last couple of weeks, Bo Nix he's kind of fallen back to earth.
Well, Nix has been hurt. He's played the last 2 games on 1.5 legs, basically.
Yeah. But no, I mean, if you're Arizona State, why wouldn't you try and switch it up too? I mean, obviously you tried to switch it up, bringing in Herm Edwards, and that backfired, did not work out at all. So why not give him a shot and see what ends up happening from it?
And shout out to Arizona for an awesome season, for finally beating Arizona State for the first time in, at least it's been has it been a decade? Maybe it was the last 12 matchups, I believe, that Arizona State got the edge over Arizona. So finally, Arizona gets the W, and Jacob DeGuara, man, he's a fun ass time to watch. I'm looking forward to seeing Arizona in a bowl game because that dude is he's so much fun to watch.
Oh yeah. The big coaching news came down Sunday morning this last week. Wisconsin loses to Minnesota for the Battle of Paul Bunyan's axe. And it had been rumored all week that Jim Leonhard was going to be named the head coach. The interim tag was going to get removed. And everyone was expecting that announcement either Saturday after the game or on Sunday. And all of a sudden, sitting there watching NFL pregame and notification comes through. Badgers are in negotiations with Cincinnati head coach Luke Fickell to come and take over the program, and ends up signing a 7-year deal, 7.9 annually during that deal as well. So Badgers with the shocker head coach hire, and it just kind of blew me away. One, you feel bad for Jim Leonhard. He's been with the program since 2016, former walk-on, 3-time All-American, 10-year NFL vet. So he's turned down opportunities throughout his time in Madison, most notably defensive coordinator position for the Packers, and feel for him. But as a Badger fan, though, I mean, Luke Fickell, only coach that's taken a non-Power 5 school to a college football playoff, had, I believe, 9 NFL draft picks this last year, including Sauce Gardner, Kobe Bryant, Desmond Ridder. And I think this was the right move, removing myself from just kind of the emotional aspect of Jim Leonhard, because obviously former Badger, that's who you want, somebody that you know is not going to leave the program at all. And that's their dream job essentially. But got to do something different. It just hasn't been working out for the Badgers as far as college football playoff aspirations. We were in the Rose Bowl the COVID year because of Ohio State not being eligible to play whatever, something stupid, just kind of fell into that one. But outside of that, hadn't been to a Rose Bowl in forever. So it was fine with Paul Chris if you want to win 8 to 9 games a year, but Luke Fickell, it's going to take him a little bit of time to get this program to where he had Cincinnati, I think, but not a 4 to 5 year rebuild. And this is a guy that can come in and be competing with Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and USC is going to be coming into in a couple of years. So I absolutely love this hire.
Yeah. I mean, I think that as much, I mean, like you said, as much as it sucks for Jim Leonhard on a personal basis, and both of us and probably any big time Badger fan to see Jim Leonhard not get this opportunity, he kind of did get his opportunity. And did we get any better when he took over the program? I don't think so. I should say no, we didn't. And so to have the opportunity to grab Luke Fickell, who last year was offered the USC job and turned it down, that makes me excited. I mean, you know, he's turning down big time jobs, and he honestly probably regrets that, making that decision to not go out and live in LA. But maybe LA is not his scene, and maybe, you know, he's always been in Ohio. He went to Ohio State. He is an Ohio dude. He coached at Ohio State that year after Jim Tressel was basically wrestled out of the program after Ohio State, and Tressel had all those recruiting scandals. Ended up going 6-4 that season with Ohio State. But again, that was kind of a, you know, faulty season given all the violations that he was trying to work through. And then they hire Urban Meyer. So he gets let go, goes to Cincinnati, builds up a program that had been halfway decent into, as you mentioned, made the college football playoff. That's insane for a team that's, you know, a non-Power 5. And this guy can obviously recruit. The fact that he had 9 guys get picked in this last NFL draft, that tells me this guy can actually bring in players. The Badgers have never had any recruiting class or any NFL draft class even close to that. So 9 NFL players out of the University of Cincinnati. I'm thinking, hey, you pimp that, hey, this is a Power 5 Big 10 school. You can play, you're going to be playing on the big stage almost every week, given that, if they keep the divisions in the Big 10, you're going to be playing against USC. You're going to be playing against UCLA. You're going to be, and we'll still have interdivision or interconference matchups against Penn State, against Michigan, against Ohio State. I think that's going to be a really huge selling point to more recruits for Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. But so I genuinely could not be more pumped about this hire. And yeah, Jim Leonard, go get yourself an NFL defensive coordinator job. You deserve it. You gave it your all as the head coach for these last 7 weeks. But we shouldn't be giving out head coaching jobs because we feel bad for the guy because he dedicated himself to the university. We should be giving out head coaching jobs that are $7 million a year, as you mentioned, to the guy that actually is best fit for this job. So shit, Jim Leonard, go get yourself an NFL DC job, or shit, let's just make an even trade. You go be head coach at Cincinnati. I'm good with that. Go get yourself a baller job and make your money and prove that you can be an NFL head coach somewhere. But Luke Fickell to the Badgers, that is a massive win, not only for, and maybe not for this current team, but I think he's going to be able to bring over some of his inbound recruits from Cincinnati. We already saw some Twitter action on a 4-star quarterback that was designated to go to Cincinnati, that he might be coming to Wisconsin. And so, hey, maybe we already have a new quarterback for the future with this Luke Fickell hire. So I literally cannot love this hire anymore. I mean, next best hire would have been Lincoln Riley, I guess. but for Luke Fickell to come to the Badgers, that is absolutely massive.
Oh. And I don't know that we'll necessarily hear the last of Jim Leonard too. What I would like to see him do is, as much as, I mean, number one, I'd love to have him back as our DC, but I don't think that's going to happen. But hopefully he goes and gets a head coaching position at another university, gets a lot more head coaching experience. I think ultimately that was the demise, is that he has 7 games of head coaching experience. And obviously Luke Fickell has quite a bit more than that with a lot of success. And down the road, this is one of the only things I don't like about the hire, is that he is an Ohio State grad. His wife is an Ohio State grad. He's probably going to be an Ohio State coach at some point in time. So when that day comes, maybe Jim Leonard will be ready to be the head coach and can do a Paul Christ. Paul Christ went over to Pittsburgh, was their head coach there, and then came over to the Badgers. So Jim Leonard, go get that experience and come on back.
But if Luke Fickell is good enough here at Wisconsin for Ohio State to want him, then I'm going to be good for, if he's good enough for the next 3 to 4 years and we win Big Ten titles at some point, like it might suck. It's going to suck to lose him if he does end up going to Ohio State. But we got to take those years, because they wouldn't hire him if he sucked with the Badgers. Yeah. So, hey, if we're a stepping stone and he's an awesome coach, I'm okay with that. Just like Cincinnati was a stepping stone for Fickell to a bigger job. And those Bearcat fans, they have to love it.
Yeah. And just going along with those stepping stones, stepping the Carolina Panthers, using that as a stepping stone to get the Nebraska head coaching job. Matt Rule is now the Nebraska Cornhuskers head coach. I think that was the least surprising hire to me of the weekend. He'd been rumored to have interest in that one. Familiar with that
for a while
territory.
I mean, it was weeks where that rumor was pretty hot for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Yep. So he's familiar with the central area of the United States as far as recruiting, being the Baylor head coach down in Texas down there. So I think it's a good fit. I am very curious to see what happens if he can rejuvenate the success that he had at Baylor, took over when Art Briles was canned for his scandal down there.
Go to hell.
Kind of took over from that, but we'll see. I mean, obviously not successful in the NFL by any means, took that money and ran, and
$40 million still on that contract that's owed to him, by the way.
Yeah.
What a baller. That guy's a good businessman, if anything.
Yep. And then the only other one is Hugh Freeze is the Auburn head coach. Auburn apparently liked what they saw from his Liberty squad getting their ass kicked by UMass this last weekend. And they're like,
UMass.
We got to hire him. So Hugh Freeze, going back to the SEC, former Ole Miss coach that, had his issues there as well with hookers. So
not only that, but he had all those recruiting violations because he was paying players. Now he can legally pay players. So I think this is a sneaky good hire because he's obviously good at paying players to come to his school.
Yeah.
So gotta give it up to Hugh Freeze for for all that.
Yep. And that was one that also kind of came by surprise. It was rumored Lane Kiffin was going to be moving from Ole Miss over to Auburn, and he's going to be staying at Ole Miss for the foreseeable future there. So, but 3 coaches, and Deion Sanders has been offered the Colorado job, but has not accepted it yet. So I think he's still kind of mulling his options.
I thought I saw he turned that down. I
know he said he'd been offered it.
He said they're not the only ones that have made an offer. So, he said, this report is true and they're not the only ones. I'd be a liar if I told you they didn't. You know they did. I know they did. So it is what it is. That's the most useless freaking quote of all time. But the other thing, too, that he said that kind of caught my attention was that he said, attention is nothing new to me. Like, come on, I'm not being braggadocious. That's a wonderful word, isn't it? I just came up with that. I just came up with that word, braggadocious. Like, no, man, that's a word. But no, he said being in the spotlight isn't new to me. So I think he's holding out for a better offer. I mean, if we're being honest, Colorado is one of the worst Power 5 jobs in the country.
Yeah.
So if I'm Deion, I'm holding out for a better job than that.
Yeah. Absolutely. You can stick around at Jackson State.
Even if I was going to say stick around at Jackson State.
Wait for something else to open up that's more your bread and butter than going to Colorado.
Nobody wants to go there.
No. All right. We are done with the regular season. Well, mostly the regular season. A couple of stragglers this weekend playing, but it's mostly college championship weekend this last weekend, and there were some huge implications from this last weekend. I want to kick it off. The game, Columbus, Ohio State favored in that game over Michigan. Jim Harbaugh finally got a W last year against Ohio State after failing miserably the previous times before, and now has a 2-game win streak. Michigan wins for the first time at Ohio State in quite some time. And
2001?
Yeah. Yep.
Was it? Yep.
So 21 years. Granted, they alternate every year, but still long losing streak to Ohio State, and Michigan solidifies themselves. We're at 5:42 Central Time right now. We'll see if this win was enough to put them into that 1 seed or if they'll be the 2 seed right behind Georgia. But either way, Michigan is going to be in the college football playoff, barring some unforeseen miracle from the Purdue Boilermakers on Saturday. But Ohio State is now more than likely going to be that 5th seed on the outside looking in on the playoff.
Hashtag OLI. Yeah. I mean, we just saw Michigan, Ohio State came in, ended up being a 9.5 point favorite at the start of this game because that Blake Corum news came out kind of late in the week about him being questionable. He ended up playing in that game for 2 carries and less than 10 yards. It was either 3 or 6 yards on the ground. And from there on, Ohio State dominated the whole first quarter, and it kind of looked like Ohio State was going to end up running away with it. Michigan from the second quarter on, though, big play after big play through the air, two massive plays in the first half. And then it looked like Ohio State kind of made the switch defensively to say, oh shit, we need to defend against the big pass play. And because Cornelius Johnson, their wide receiver, had 2 60+ yard touchdowns. And then Michigan completely flipped their offensive script, and it was Donovan Edwards, and it was third running back, and just big plays on the ground from there out. And Michigan just completely dominated that physicality, absolutely destroyed Ohio State. This is what I kind of, what we've been kind of talking about all season long is, yeah, we know Ohio State's offense can be explosive, but all season we've been questioning that defense where they've been giving up big points to some less than ideal opponents, some below par opponents. And it really came to show here where Michigan just out physicaled them, and they dominated that second half. I mean, a 45-23 final when Ohio State had the lead at half, or, it was really close at half.
Yeah, 21-17, I think, at half.
Yeah, that's right. So we've been saying it all season. Ohio State does have the offense, but do they have the defense? And you just run into a more physical Michigan team now 2 years in a row where Michigan was clearly the way more physical team, and they just ended up getting boat raced. Donovan Edwards, by the way, that dude is real. He's been sitting behind Blake Corum all season, so we haven't really seen much out of him. That dude is real. He came in as a very high-end recruit, hasn't had much opportunity to shine. He shined, man. He shined.
Yeah, he did.
He is legit.
The only other game I think I wanted to bring up here was that USC Notre Dame game, and you had alluded to it in your takeaways from the prior weekend, USC's win over UCLA, and they've been absolutely rolling lately. Caleb Williams is the odds-on favorite, barring him just shitting his pants in the Pac-12 championship game. He's going to be your Heisman winner, so he pretty much got that locked up this last week, and USC has looked really good. They're running through some good competition now, knocking off ranked teams in back-to-back weeks. Have a rematch against a Utah team that did beat them in Utah earlier on in the season, but lucky for them, this one will be at a neutral site in Las Vegas this week for the Pac-12 championship, so level playing field there. And
they're playing at the Raider Stadium, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So no, should be a good game, and we'll get into the preview for that tomorrow on our release. But no, USC is a team that I think the last time we recorded this prior to that USC UCLA game, one of my takeaways from the prior weekend was, is the Pac-12 done? Oregon had gotten beat by Washington, and it just looked like they were all beaten up on themselves, but somehow USC has emerged from the ashes that was the Pac-12 burning themselves to the ground, and has able to put themselves in a spot that win, and they're going to be in the playoff.
Yeah. I mean, Caleb Williams, that's kind of all I have to say. I feel like he is the most sensational player. If he doesn't win the Heisman, whoever doesn't vote for him deserves to have their Heisman vote revoked, because it is as obvious, I think, as it can be at this point that he's the most sensational, best player in the country. He would be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft this year if he was eligible. And he's not because of NFL rules. But that guy's crazy. And this is actually an excellent Do you have anything more on that game? Because I could transition this.
Nope.
Okay, perfect. So let me transition this over to the Oklahoma Texas Tech game, where Oklahoma ended up losing to Texas Tech 51-48. Now, we've seen Lincoln Riley move from Oklahoma to USC, and he was immediately able to get USC's offense right. Obviously, Caleb Williams and the transfer portal has a lot to do with
100%.
him getting that offense right really fast, but he was able to do it immediately. Brett Venables is a defensive coordinator, was a defensive coordinator for Clemson for however many years, and they just gave up 51 points to Texas Tech. The sign of a good coach, an incoming head coach, is that you get your side of the ball right. It's like Nathaniel, we've talked about this all year too. Nathaniel Hackett in Denver for the Broncos. That offense makes you sick to your stomach. So he needs to be gone because he can't get the offense right. That's his side of the ball. Brett Venables can't get the defense right at Oklahoma. And I get it's the Big 12, and I get it's Oklahoma, and you don't normally have great defenses in the Big 12. But you're supposed to be the star of the show coming in. Bob Stoops. Good enough of a defense to win national titles. Lincoln Riley. They never won a title under Lincoln, but they were always at least in the mix when it came to national title contention and at least college football playoff contention. You expect Brett Venables to come in and at least be able to get the defense right, and to let up 51 to a lowly Texas Tech team. That's inexcusable. I mean, I hate in college football when we're talking about a one and done. But with a program like OU, I feel like this loss may have solidified that Venables should be a one and done, because there's no excuse to give up 51 points to a Texas Tech team that, let's be frank, is the fifth best team in Texas?
Yeah. And Oklahoma finishing at 500. Granted, they did lose Caleb Williams. They lost other players to the portal this last year, but that's inexcusable from a big-time program like Oklahoma, even coming over in your first year. Like you touched on, that defense was horrendous this year and gave up a ton of points to teams that they had no business giving up those points to. And it makes you wonder too, and for the future with Oklahoma, you're a couple years out from being in the SEC, where you're going to have to play defense if you want to be able to compete with some of the teams and win divisions, win SEC championships. And if you can't get that right, how are you even going to be competing in the SEC when you can't stop Big 12 teams right now? And I don't know if they're going to end up moving on after 1 year. He's definitely going to be on the hot seat, but he was somebody that going into last offseason, he deserved a shot to be a head coach. He put in his time, but we were very skeptical of how he was going to be doing at Oklahoma, and he's proved us right that we should have been skeptical. And I think they're going to give him another year, but if he doesn't turn it around by the time they make that move to the SEC, you better believe they're going to be going out and finding the new shiny flashy toy as a head coach and running that coach out there with his program that he wants to run when they move over to the SEC.
Let me throw a name back at you, Mark Stoops. I mean, do you can Venables now and go get Bob Stoops' kid? Isn't it? I mean,
he's
Stoops
lost his luster
he's not
too.
Going to be out there and available beyond this offseason. I think.
I mean, maybe you can. I don't know that he's going to necessarily be moving it all this offseason. He might stick it out at Kentucky.
Why stick it out? Why stick it out?
Yeah. I mean, he probably shouldn't. Give
me one reason why Mark Stoops would stay at Kentucky if he's got offers. Will Levis is good as gone and his rotten bananas. and his Mayo coffee.
Yeah. Well,
why would you stick around?
It's the SEC, and there's job security there, knowing that that's one of the power conferences that are going to be coming up. But if he was smart, he'd take a look up at Iowa State, and Matt Campbell should have left a couple of years ago, and his program is in the bottom right now, and he's not going to probably have an opportunity. But
that's what I'm saying. And Oklahoma's what, 1 year out, maybe 2 seasons.
But Kentucky had a solid program last year, and they didn't go after Mark Stoops. So I don't necessarily think that they're going to be like, oh yeah, let's go after Mark Stoops. And I don't know.
I think Oklahoma's making a mistake if they don't. That's it.
No, I agree with you on that.
I think it could be Mark Stoops. I think it should be Mark Stoops, or you stick with Venables. But if Mark Stoops is interested in that job, you have to make that hire. And because Oklahoma's jumping into the SEC in a year, or you got one more season, maybe this could be Mark Stoops, almost preseason, one season with OU until they jump into the SEC. Because I believe 2024 is the year, right? That Oklahoma, I think it's
technically 2025, because I think USC, UCLA are going to be coming in 1 year prior to them. But I think that they're trying to work out.
You're right.
I think they're trying to work out, though, an early buyout for it. But still, I agree with you completely. If Mark Stoops, if you're Oklahoma, I'm moving on from Venables, but I just don't know that they will. I mean, you finish 6-6, their season's done outside of the bowl game.
That's not acceptable.
But he's still there right now. Why would he be fired?
If you're Oklahoma, accept an invite to a bowl game at this point? That's pathetic. This isn't your standards. Do you want your Oklahoma Sooners and these recruits to see you in the freaking, garbage bowl, whatever the hell, whatever bowl? I can't keep up with bowl names anymore. Yeah. They change sponsors every other year. And I believe there's 82. Okay. So there's 41 bowl games. So you need 82 teams, and there's only 79 teams that have 6 wins. So there's going to be 3 teams in there that are 5-7 or worse. That's a sign there's too many bowl games. But hey, it's something to watch on a random Tuesday afternoon.
Right. Any other games you want to throw out, Joe, before we slide over to
NFL? Let's jump into the professionals.
Sounds good. Where would you like to start, sir? What were some of the big games you took away from this last weekend? I had Red Zone fired up at that 12 o'clock slate. Justin Fields wasn't playing for the Bears, so I knew what was inevitable there. So I threw on Red Zone, and man, there was so much scoring, so many good games this weekend. I was actually impressed and surprised by the NFL.
Well, why don't you kick it off with, then you didn't watch the Bears, but you were keeping an eye on Mike White and those Jets.
For sure. Yeah. And Mike White had an absolute monster game against them. Garrett Wilson,
Mike White,
Garrett Wilson, 2 touchdowns. And yeah, I think I tweeted it out or sent a group message out to our guys saying, well, Zach Wilson's done in New York. I mean, when Mike White comes in, granted, the Bears defense is not good right now. They've traded away quite a few of their guys for their rebuild, but even so, he had some zip on the ball. He's hitting guys in stride. He looked good in the elements. I mean, it was pouring there, absolute shit weather, with wind, with heavy rains, and still found a way to have just a monster game and get the Jets to, what are they, 7-5?
7-4.
7-4. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, week 12, they already had their bye. So, yeah, 7-4. 90% sure on that.
Yep. But no,
I mean, you got to
done.
At this point, you have to ride out Mike White for the rest of the season, right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
Zach Wilson. Did you see his attitude, by the way, on the sidelines? I don't know if, you caught it on Red Zone, but he just was sitting there, looked like he was kind of pouting. I mean, which I probably would be too. I'm like, man, I'm the number 2 overall pick. What? I'm sitting here. Oh, like, I'd be a little pouty too.
Ryan Leaf did that too.
Ryan Leaf had another set of problems with him, but Zach Wilson's biggest problem is moms want him too much. But but no, I mean Mike White. I mean he's had now multiple 300+ yard throwing games. Yes, you did say that it's against a relatively poor. Okay, I guess not relatively, 100% poor Bears defense.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, a 300-yard game, you're throwing against professional. You're still putting up those numbers against professional NFL players. That's shit. That's still impressive. And what I think was more encouraging, though, was how excited the defense was to play for him and how excited Elijah Moore was to play for him. And we saw Garrett Wilson finally go off for the first time this season. This team just has a new energy to them with Mike White at quarterback. There's no way you can go to Zach Wilson again. It's going to, unless Mike White comes out 2 week, back-to-back weeks where he goes 115 yards, 3 picks. But then from there, don't you just go to Joe Flacco?
Oh, 100%.
You don't go back to Jets, Flacco and not back to Zach Wilson.
If I'm Robert Saleh, Zach Wilson's not seeing the field the rest of this year, not only for his play, but also for his not taking ownership and his crap attitude. Yeah, he's somebody that had a huge head coming into it, number 2 pick in the draft, and I don't see him panning out in the NFL. There's questions about him to begin with, and I just don't see it. He's going to be one of those forgotten names from that draft class. And yeah,
we might be looking at a few forgotten names. I mean, when you really look at it, Trevor Lawrence looks the part. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, his comeback against the Ravens. Let's move into that game.
Yep.
That's the best I've ever seen Trevor Lawrence play.
NFL.
In the NFL for sure. And that game-winning drive was awesome. He was hitting on every pass. He had complete command of the offense. Christian Kirk had a few really nice catches. I don't know if he's necessarily worth all that cash that they paid him, but they obviously have cash to spend.
No.
He's the clear number 1 right now. Zay Jones has been dope. Like those two, he's making Christian Kirk, who looked like a potential number, iffy number 3, into a really nice contributor. Zay Jones has been bouncing team to team his whole career, from the Bills to the Raiders, now the Jags. And Trevor Lawrence, he had what? I mean, it was double-digit receptions. It might be 12 receptions for Zay Jones this past weekend. And for Lawrence to make that comeback drive against what a Ravens defense that has been less than what we expect from a Ravens defense all season long, but still, that's incredibly impressive from a second-year player. And it's like, that just showed me kind of, he's here to stay.
Yeah. No, and he's gotten off rolling now with that one, gets a nice Detroit matchup this week, but it was just impressive, the poise that he took to lead them back down the field after. It was a pretty crazy 2-minute stretch there, and including the last drive too. Justin Tucker attempted a 67-yard field goal that wasn't terribly short. I mean,
they said it'd be good from 65.
Yeah. So
he's hit a 66-yard game winner. So don't you have to give him a shot?
Yeah. I think that's your best shot there, other than throwing the Hail Mary, and I'd rather have the field goal there. But
I'd take that field goal.
Yeah. No, and with the supporting cast, ETN went down in this one too, and Trevor Lawrence still ends up finding a way to win and has looked pretty solid this season so far. I mean, it hasn't been what you would expect with how highly touted he was, but he's making the strides that you want to see without big name guys that are there to support him. He doesn't have a Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams. He doesn't have that stud wide receiver, but he's making that supporting cast around him better, and they're helping him out as well. And yeah, going back to the Zach Wilson thing, the Trevor Lawrence right now is one from this class that we're going to remember down the road. I think you got your franchise quarterback there. Otherwise, jury's still out on those other guys. Justin Fields has looked good the last couple of weeks, but haven't seen that sustained success either.
Yeah, that's where I was gonna go next. Was Justin Fields looks awesome on the ground. He's absolutely a playmaker. We just need to see a little bit more out of him, I think, through the air. Yeah. Obviously, it looks like he's gonna miss probably. Is this a long-term injury for Fields? Is he out?
It's a non-throwing
weeks.
It's a non-throwing shoulder injury. They haven't put him on IR, so it makes me think that it's maybe a couple week injury. I don't think he's going to be back this week because their season's done. There's no sense in bringing him back unless he's 100%.
Mooney's out for the Mooney just got put on IR.
Mooney's on IR. Eddie Jackson's on IR.
Eddie Jackson just got put on IR.
So yeah, I mean they're just trying to get a good draft pick.
I think if you're the Bears management, though, you've seen what you want to see out of Fields. Yes. And at this point, the smart move would be sit him down 100% healthy. And then once we get into the off season, we get him a number one. Maybe you grab a Jackson Smith and Jigba type of a receiver. And what's that? Oh, injury concerns?
I just don't think they're going to be going wide receiver because I think I'm glad that Justin Fields has shown something because I was nervous that they were going to end up just giving up on him and drafting one of the quarterbacks, whether that's a CJ Stroud, Bryce Young. They're going to end up having a top 5 pick. And with those two guys up there, I think there's a very good chance that Will Anderson could fall into their lap and have arguably the best prospect in this draft fall to them and shore up their defensive line. That'd be a huge, huge boost to that young defense.
Yeah, that would be, I guess the defense is what's needed. And they do have Claypool now, but they still don't necessarily have a number one wideouts. And
no,
I think that's okay. I think we can agree though. Joe Burrow, really nice rookie season. Second year, he gets Jamar Chase, took a massive jump.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Lawrence, if he gets a true number one, I think takes a massive jump. Can we not make that same argument with Fields where he would take let's say Smith and Jigba goes to the Jags and he makes a similar type of an impact that Jamar Chase did in Cincy. The Jags end up being, they turn themselves into a 10-win team, a 9-10-win team potentially. What about the Bears? Why is that? Why can't you make that same argument with the Bears?
No, I think 100% that would be beneficial, but I just think where they fall in the draft, you're going to be reaching for a wide receiver at that point. So unless you trade back with a quarterback needy team to the late single digits, early teens, and get yourself a wide receiver there, where they're going to end up drafting is going to be too early. And there's some really solid prospects that are going to be there because let's face it, they're not one wide receiver away from being a playoff contender, Super Bowl contender. That line on both sides of the ball needs help along with that. So I think
that offensive line probably that has to be a priority. Yeah. I do agree there.
So there's holes
and if they have Will Anderson sitting there.
Yeah. I mean, you can't pass him up if he's sitting there, but
the only other game I want to touch on really quick is that Cardinals-Chargers game, and only for one reason. Kyler Murray, after the game, was asked about this fourth down that they failed, and he said, this was in a post-game press conference, said, schematically, we were fucked. Are you kidding, Kyler? Can you possibly make a more direct shot and at your head coach, the guy that vouched for you to be taken at that number one pick? That's a clear, massive shot directly at Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, that Arizona franchise right now is just horrendous. I mean, you gave extensions to your GM and head coach this last offseason. Cliff Kingsbury hasn't done shit in the NFL. He rode the coattails of Patrick Mahomes for a long time at Texas Tech. I think that they really need to clean house and make a lot of improvements and jumpstart that franchise, go into rebuild mode because they're just they're just not a functional franchise right now. And it starts with Kyler. Kyler is not the player that he was a couple of years ago. You can tell that he is not a locker room guy. I don't know that the team really wants to play for him either. And it just, yeah, it's frustrating because he's got all the talent in the world, but there's just so much dysfunction going on right now that something has to give in the Cardinals world.
I just don't, I don't know. So there's rumors of Sean Payton being interested in two jobs, one being the Cardinals and the second being the Chargers. But he wants control over that franchise, meaning probably GM control, or not GM being like, but probably Bill Belichick type of control. Where he's, hey, I want this guy cut. I want to pick this guy. I'm, and still have a full scouting staff and still have a GM to do all the dirty work. But he wants that type of control. The Chargers have been notoriously extremely cheap. I don't think that they're going to be willing to pay up for Sean Payton, who's going to want probably Sean McVay type of money, where you're talking close to $20 million a year. But if you're Sean Payton, why would you want to go to the Cardinals and have to deal with that quarterback and his clear immaturity, where he's throwing his coach under the bus, where he's thrown teammates under the bus, where he's made very, very poor decisions in terms of, making, instead of diving for a first down, sliding, ending up short, and then having to go for it on a fourth down and not getting it. Like Kyler's the last. I get Kyler's talent. It's immense, but I think he is the least dedicated starting quarterback in the league. And that is proven by the fact that they had to put into his contract a clause to say, hey, we want you to study 4 hours a week outside of the facility. That's nothing. 4 hours a week. They have to mandate that because clearly he was doing nothing other than work inside the facility. So if you're, and Sean Payton, by the way, going from, who's more dedicated than Drew Brees?
Yeah.
Outside of maybe
literally
Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Tom Brady. Those are the three most dedicated quarterbacks in modern NFL history. Have to be.
Yep.
To go from that to Kyler, who is the polar opposite, I feel like Peyton would just be in absolute hell if he ends up taking that Cardinals job. So hopefully for his sake, the Chargers end up being willing to pay up, and he can coach Herbert, and who's, again, he's got to be one of the more dedicated quarterbacks. He's extremely studious and extremely excellent. So I just think, I feel like Kyler's he just keeps digging himself his own grave. And if you're Cardinals management, you are fucked.
Yes. Not as fucked as the Broncos or Russell Wilson.
True.
Stuck there for a while, but not much better. That'll wrap up this episode. We'll be back with you tomorrow to preview the championship games. Have a little fun game there, along with our Drew Locks and NFL preview. But again, we can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Go to YouTube, type Dead Arm Sports into that search bar, click our black and yellow logo, then click the bell.
Black and yellow.
Then click the bell below so that way you can subscribe and know when our episodes drop. You can monitor, you can ask us a question in the chat because we monitor it during our recordings. You can ask us any questions there. If you miss out on that, Gel can be found at DosGel. I can be found at DosJPack. You can send us in questions there. And subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot, get you some swag sent out. What are those listening platforms, Gel?
Hit us up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Pods, all free for your listening pleasure. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on your chosen listening platform. Take a screenshot of that written review. Send it to us on our socials at Dead Arm Sports on Twitter or Instagram. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search Dead Arm Sports. You can also find us on YouTube. Shocker. Search Dead Arm Sports. And as Josh said, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that bell to make sure that you get alerts whenever we go live.
Well, again, that'll wrap up this episode. Appreciate everybody out there. Hopefully you had a great Thanksgiving weekend. Lots of football to look forward to this weekend. I'm sure more fallout from coaching hires and all of that. We are in the midst of the college football playoffs. Rankings dropping as we speak. So we will be able to break that down at the beginning of the next show. So tune into that tomorrow. And Joe, close her out.
USA. USA. USA.